thanks to you, Chris, and to AGXPE West and the West Coast chapter for including me today. I'm honored to be here and excited to be part of the group today. So you have me here. We're based in the Princeton area. I'm in the Philly area talking to you today. So I hope that's okay for the West Coast chapter meeting. And so I'll just, in the interest of time, I'll sort of, I'll trust that you've seen my bio, which was part of the marketing materials, and Chris was nice enough to do a little bit of an intro at the beginning. So I won't dwell on that other than to just offer a little perspective on my compliance architect's role as managing partner here. If anyone's not familiar with the firm, we are a boutique consultancy. We provide quality, regulatory, and compliance consulting services to life sciences organizations. The firm has been doing so since 2009, but I have actually recently joined. So I'm a new entrant. I joined the company only in this past January, and that's after 30 years in healthcare. But I say that primarily because I just want to give a proper acknowledgement of the information I'm about to present to you on Quality Pulse, that I really take zero credit for the development of this wonderful program. And I want to give that credit where it's due, which is to the, I feel very fortunate to have joined a very sharp and thought-leading team at Compliance Architects. And that group has literally spent over a decade on the development of the program that today, the offering that is called Quality Pulse, and is a quality culture diagnostic for the life sciences industry. So it's a program that we feel is groundbreaking in the field of quality culture diagnostics in this industry. And so I'm excited to present it to you. So let me jump to the headline here, and then we'll dive into the slides. But it is really critically important for life sciences companies to establish and maintain a superior quality culture. And in spite of that importance, sadly, so many companies seem to learn that the hard way through the consequences of not doing so. And that begs the question of, why would that be? Why do so many companies end up having to learn that the hard way? And I think there are a variety of factors that play into that. A couple of them that I think are most common, and I don't think any of this is going to surprise the folks on this call. But, in some organizations, you will hear of the quality organization or the quality function referred to as a cost center. We even hear the term a necessary evil. And so those kinds of things are challenging. And to add to that, historically, measuring quality culture within an organization has been somewhat of an amorphous thing. It's been tough to assess and really understand quality culture and really to garner clear, actionable intelligence such that you can implement improvements. And so what I'm going to spend the next 20, 25 minutes or so walking you through is really illustrating how we believe that Quality Pulse has changed that and really redefines how life sciences companies can assess and understand their internal quality culture. So without further ado, just a little bit on the journey to getting to this new tool and this assessment capability. And I've mentioned some of this, but it's been over a decade in the making. And the team at Compliance Architects that has contributed to this boasts over 100 years of industry experience. These are folks who have worked in both small and very large organizations within life sciences across all of the regulated product classes, or not all of them, but many of them, in a multitude of jobs and different roles and functions. And so there's a lot of experience to draw on. And in addition to that, the team has taken the research and science aspects of it quite seriously, and all those things are incorporated. And then over that time frame, there's been a great deal of iteration and improvement in the model. And so that's what you're about to see. So what is the scientific basis for Quality Pulse. The methodology has been adapted from several places. The first two are organizational culture principles of Edward Schein, as well as system dynamics principles of Peter Senge, both of whom I'm sure most of you are familiar with, out of MIT Sloan. And so their theories have been sort of combined into this model, in addition to leveraging literally dozens of research articles on things like corporate culture, quality culture, organizational behavior, and many of those articles, as many as could be found, were actually specific to the life sciences context. And then, as I mentioned before, decades of direct experience in quality operations and organizations across pharma, medical device, biotech organizations, both big and small. And so let's dig in a bit to Quality Pulse. I'm going to start here on the slide in the lower left with that box, that a foundational principle of Quality Pulse is that actual and observed behaviors of a group, so the group's culture, are the result of the beliefs of its individual members. And so Quality Pulse pulls from Schein's work, I'm sure you're familiar with some of these terms on the right, but these three unique vectors, which are the Quality Pulse domains, which influence belief systems about quality within an organization. So these are expressed values, underlying assumptions, and systems and structures. And so the expressed values are, what does your company say about the importance of quality? And these are quite explicit and demonstrative. They're tangible. They're easy to identify. And I'm going to actually skip the middle one for a second and go to the third, systems and structures. Also pretty easy to identify. These are things like policies and procedures and IT systems and methodologies that result in positive or negative perceptions and experiences regarding formal and informal structural enablers of quality outcomes within the organization. So both of those two, the top and the bottom, the values and the structures, are fairly explicit and easy to see. In the middle, you have the underlying assumptions. And this is the aspect of what individuals believe is important about quality based upon their observations within the organization. And this is often described as, companies walking the talk. How well do observation and individual experience align with the company's stated expectations in terms of how quality should be handled and managed throughout the organization. And what's interesting about this middle bucket is it's really widely acknowledged as being probably the most important piece of the puzzle, and yet is the most difficult to assess directly. And so these are sort of the three vectors or the three Quality Pulse domains. And then, layered into that, so that brings in the Schein theory. Layered into that is the work of Senge, which looks at these causal loops, right? So you can see in this diagram, you have the expressed values results in a leadership loop. The underlying assumptions are what we call the walk the talk loop. And then the quality structures, processes, and systems is the effectiveness loop. And it's really a dynamic behavioral cultural model that is constructed through Quality Pulse and through the approach of the assessment. So, in contrast to some of the other approaches, it is a dynamic model and delivered in a regulatory industry context. The causal loop structure that I mentioned contains these reinforcing feedback loops. So that's between the Quality Pulse domains, which can strengthen or weaken a company's quality culture. And then I'll jump to this last point, that it is a dynamic behavioral assessment in a quality systems context. So it goes beyond simply benchmarking and into improvement and remediation, which is a critical component of this offering and assessment methodology. So moving to the next slide, it is not only a behavioral assessment, but also a behavioral assessment in an operational context. So when you implement Quality Pulse within an organization, and individual respondents are given a questionnaire, they're going to be given a bunch of scenarios. And those scenarios are going to cut across both the quality pulse domains that you're seeing on the left side of the screen that we just talked about, the express values, the underlying assumptions, and the systems and structures. But they're also going to cut across a number of operational domains. And so these operational domains provide context for the quality pulse vectors. So each scenario is going to consist of one of each of these things, a domain, a quality pulse domain or vector, and an operational domain. And then just to get into those operational domains a little bit more, I'm going to read through those so you have a sense of what they are. It's message continuity, objectives and rewards, operational effectiveness and change, leadership, teamwork and collaboration, quality governance, resolving quality issues, metrics and quality management, and vendors, partners, and service providers. And so, for example, in message continuity, how consistent are company messages on the importance of quality? In terms of objectives and rewards, how well do the objective and reward systems align with quality? And I won't walk through every one, but all the way down to vendors, how well does the company's culture extend to that external network? And so that's a little bit of background of what comprises the makeup of Quality Pulse. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the assessment methodology, specifically the assessment design and the user experience. So the design itself is comprised of two components, and this design is actually, again, part of the differentiation of this approach relative to some of the other models that have been out there historically. So a big chunk of it are what are called scored items or fixed response items. And these are items where, as I was describing before, where the respondent is presented with observations or scenarios that cut across those vectors and those operational domains and asked to choose among 6 responses. So it's a scale from strongly agree to strongly agree. And then those questions are going to be used to calculate a quality pulse domain score and a company index, or really a company index and then quality pulse domain scores across the multiple domains. In addition to the fixed response scored items, there are also a series of open response items. So part of the excitement of the Quality Pulse tool is that it uses AI technology and natural language processing technology, state-of-the-art approach for enabling open response questions. 16 of them are open response questions where someone responds in their own words. 4 of them are lists that identify specific positive examples. And those responses end up meaningfully informing the data that come out of the scored items. And they tend to provide a deeper and greater understanding of the context around the scored items and also tend to inform the actions and the outcomes of the assessment and the work that needs to be done in order to remediate situations that might exist. And then this is just very quickly to give you a flavor for the user experience. You're seeing a page of the survey tool, that the assessment that someone would complete. I would say for the respondents, it's on average about 30 to 40 minutes to complete the tool. So there's a whole education process that goes into this with the client and a communication process that we'll get into a little bit more in terms of rolling it out. But it's a very user-friendly tool. If someone gets interrupted by a phone call while they're going through this, they can leave and come back, and they'll be able to resume where they've left off. And then one other comment I'll make as you're looking at this sample survey page, I mentioned the 6-point scale. Part of the rationale for that many of you, I'm sure, are quite familiar with from theory around these things, is that you can't just split the middle. You can't, there's no, it's an even number, not an odd number. So in someone's response, they have to lean at least a little bit towards disagreeing or agreeing. They can't just come out in the middle. And next, we're going to look a little bit at reporting and analysis. The approach to setting up on the front end with the population that's using the quality pulse diagnostic incorporates fairly sophisticated metadata. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what it enables. We'll talk about the scoring rubric that comes out of this. And then I'll show you some samples so you can at least get a flavor of the types of reports that result. So I mentioned the metadata and the reporting, and really I'll actually jump to the second bullet point first, which is that in order for implementing this and making the best use out of it, it really, the pre-launch efforts are critical. And so during that pre-launch timing, all these things are discussed: client objectives, confidentiality and privacy, availability of data in the existing client sources, any client-specific terms or language that ought to be integrated into the tool, and that type of customization can occur. And then as a result, and now I'm on the top bullet here, the data analysis and action planning it can look across different attributes. So organizational attributes might be by department, might be by reporting structure. You may want to look geographically by site locations or even by country. And then similarly, there are individual attributes like someone's tenure with the organization or their experience level. And there is an ability to slice and dice the information. And in the upfront work, we can even sort of set up the data set so that these types of results and analyses will result from the use of the tool. And then in terms of the scoring rubric, it's really intentionally kept quite simple. So scores are presented on a 0 to 10 scale. They're rounded to the nearest tenth. A 0 is an unfavorable score and a 10 is a favorable score. And the scoring itself is meant to be directional and indicative and relative. And what it allows is it creates a quantitative representation of what is really generally a qualitative topic. So it gives you a way to understand things simply and to talk about them and then to be able to dig in and understand further and drive towards actions. And so, you may see strong signals, you may see weak signals, and if you see a neutral signal, that really indicates that there's a need to do further analysis and understand why you've landed in that place. And so just a little more on the scoring. So an organization will receive a Quality Pulse Company Index score, and that will be an overall score of the average of all the domains. Perhaps more importantly is they will then be able to dig in according to the domain. So for expressed values, for underlying assumptions, and for systems and structures, they will see separate domain scores for each of those. And what you can see in the lower right is that healthy quality cultures will yield both strong scores in the domains, but also balanced scores. And so in the example that's just meant to be a sort of a silly example here of an extreme, but in the upper right, you're seeing a situation where you have very favorable scores on two of the domains, and then systems and structures is particularly low. And that's showing that there's inconsistency across the domains in this organization. And in a situation like that, in this example, the good news is that the expressed values and the underlying assumptions are both consistent and favorable. And so that's saying that what the company touts as its approach to quality and the value of quality is really being believed by the employees, and it's sort of owned, and they're walking the talk, but the systems and structures aren't there. So if this is a smaller, earlier stage company, they probably are going to be okay for a little while because of that consistency in messaging, but this is probably not a scalable situation, and so many life sciences organizations are in a position of rapid growth and needing to accomplish that. And so this is a situation where remediation would need to focus on putting those systems and structures in place to support the other two domains. And so just, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I'm going to show you two sample reports. This first one is looking at the scored reports, so the fixed response type questions, and you can see that you can get the overall score. You can dig in on the domain scores and get a sense of where things stand. You can start to look according to specific operational domains. You can look according to levels of managerial levels and so forth within the organization, and you can really delve into things. And we have the ability to generate reports that will home in on certain aspects of this where it seems like more attention is needed. And then the other sort of set of reports ties to the open response reports. So you're using natural language processing capabilities and AI capabilities and technologies. And so you have the ability, one of the things that folks seem to really enjoy from this are the word clouds that result. And so not only can you get a word cloud, but in this example, if you notice in the top center where there seems to be a QA and QC issue tied to the managerial level, where you see those are kind of highlighted in red, where you have a number of unfavorable responses, you can actually select those particular areas, manager level QA, QC, and hone in on a word cloud that's specific to those topics and those groups. And so there's some really nice flexibility in how you can look at the data, use the text responses to really inform an organization around a little bit more color of what's coming through in the numerical information. And so I've touched on this already, but you have the ability to explore responses between different populations. And so results can be explored further using the respondent metadata setup to compare organizational attributes, geographical attributes, individual attributes, all the things that we touched on before. And then I want to show you, before I go to the closing slide, I do want to spend a minute or two on the deployment and what this typically looks like. A typical quality pulse deployment runs from anywhere from probably 6 to 8 weeks to around 3 months. And it occurs in 3 phases. So the first phase, which I mentioned earlier, is really important for getting the metadata set up and sort of teeing up the success of the use of the assessment. The first phase is the pre-launch phase. There are a number of templates that Compliance Architects provides for communication plan, executive messaging, announcing the launch to the group of folks who are going to receive it. And you're really identifying respondent metadata. You're completing the report delivery plan. You're assessing other considerations that might need to be factored into the approach. And then you complete the communications plan and go ahead and launch. And so then you get to the assessment launch. And then for the assessment phase, Compliance Architect certainly assists and oversees that phase. There's some client communications within the organization that continue to occur where reminders are sent out, and you're trying to maximize the completions of the survey. So there's a technical setup. There's the respondent metadata loading, launching and monitoring the response rate, revising communications, and setting up the report delivery plan. And then you close the assessment, and the last phase of this is the analysis and reporting phase, where you're doing interpretation and review of results, and then you get the outputs. And then, of course, most critical are the next steps and the messages that come out of this. So a big focus, and again, something that we feel really differentiates Quality Pulse in the marketplace is the focus on action plans and follow-up, and really, not just being a benchmarking tool, but being something that helps you to improve your quality outcomes over time. And so the final slide here, just in summary, we believe that Quality Pulse is the world's most comprehensive and scientifically based quality culture assessment model. It is specifically designed for life sciences companies, incorporates state-of-the-art analytics, including sophisticated metadata analysis and artificial intelligence and natural language processing capabilities. And it provides, as I said, specific actionable intelligence to direct improvement programs delivering better quality outcomes and improved organizational excellence. So with that, I thank you for your time. We really believe that this is redefining how life sciences companies assess and understand their internal quality compliance, and we're excited about it. And, just one last comment I'll make, because my sense of this group and your composition, this might resonate, but we had a recent engagement we did for a large life sciences organization, and one of the things that was yielded from the survey or from the diagnostic tool is that 5 of the 6 most negative responses were in the arena of training. So the message that was coming through pretty loudly for this particular organization was that the employees of the organization were not buying into what the organization was saying about the importance of training in the quality arena. And rather, the impression seemed to be that the primary goal of training activities was to check a box and say that people were trained, as opposed to really sort of owning the importance of that throughout the organization.